silence. It's not just the absence of words, it's a weapon, a shield, a final move in a game that you never asked to play. Because there comes a point when the noise around you isn't worth your energy, when the arguments feel recycled, when the lies lose their sting, and when you finally realize not everything deserves a response. Maybe you've been lied to. Maybe they twisted your words, mocked your growth, betrayed your trust, all while smiling. You could have clapped back, you could have exposed them, but instead you chose silence. Not because you were afraid, not because you didn't have something to say, but because deep down you knew they weren't worth the cost of your peace. See, silence isn't weakness, it's power under control. It's restraint in a world addicted to reaction. And the truth is, every time you bite your tongue, every time you walk away, every time you let them speak while you stay quiet, you're handing karma the mic, and karma never stutters. In a world where everyone wants to be heard, where everyone wants the last word, silence cuts deeper. Because people expect conflict, they crave the drama. But when you go silent, you don't just confuse them, you force them to sit in the echo of their own actions. So no, this isn't about avoiding confrontation. This is about choosing your battles, knowing your worth, and understanding that some situations don't require justice from your mouth. They require patience, because what goes around always comes back. These are the 7 moments you must stay silent, not to lose, but to rise, and to let karma do what it does best, quietly, brutally, and right on time. But before we go deeper, I need you to pause, not the video, yourself. Because the next few minutes aren't just another list, they're a mirror, and once you look into it, really look, you might not see the same person staring back. This isn't about staying silent to look strong, it's about learning. Why? Silence has always been the strength you've ignored. Let me ask you this. How many times have you wasted energy on people who didn't even deserve your reaction? How many hours have you lost crafting the perfect reply, only to realize later it changed nothing? We live in a world obsessed with noise, opinions, arguments, retorts. But what if I told you the most powerful person in the room is usually the one who says nothing at all? What if silence isn't weakness, but mastery? Over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through something most people will never understand. Moments in life where silence does more than words ever could. Where saying nothing isn't passive, it's surgical, intentional, stoic. And by the time we reach the final one, if you're still here, you won't just see the wisdom in silence. You'll feel it, because it'll start changing the way you think, the way you react, the way you protect your energy. You'll begin to notice how your peace has been leaking, drop by drop, into arguments that didn't matter, into people who never listened, into noise you thought was necessary, but never really was. The truth is, silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. And when you master the discipline of holding your tongue, not out of fear, not out of submission, but because your peace is worth more than the last word, you step into a version of yourself that most people never meet. A version that doesn't react to everything. A version that chooses what deserves attention. A version that doesn't chase revenge, because you already won. That version of you is dangerous, but not in the way the world defines danger. Not in fists, not in shouting, not in proof. In stillness, in presence, in knowing exactly what you could say and choosing not to. That's power. So if you're still watching, good, because this video isn't entertainment, it's a challenge. Can you be quiet enough long enough to hear what your silence has been trying to tell you, stay. Watch all the way through, because moment 7, that one will hit you in a place no one sees. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Not for me, for you. Because this channel isn't about motivation. It's not about noise. It's about building something in you that no one can take away. And to do that, you'll need silence. Real silence. Not the kind where your mouth is shut and your mind is screaming, but the kind where your soul stops running. You're not here to impress anyone. You're here to remember who you are without the noise. So breathe. Stay with me. Let the noise of the world fall off your shoulders and step into the quiet, because what comes next will teach you more about strength than 1,000 arguments ever could.
Scenario 1, when they try to provoke you publicly. Have you ever been in the middle of a crowd and suddenly realized you're the center of an unspoken show, maybe at a workplace meeting? Someone makes an offhand comment, thinly veiled, just loud enough for others to hear, and everyone turns toward your direction, expecting, waiting, hovering. Your heart races. You feel the heat creeping up your neck, grimace, stutter. The world narrows to their eyes. You could respond. You could bite back. You should prove yourself. But here's what most people don't see. When someone tries to provoke you in public, they're seeking an audience. They want to pull you into their narrative so they can look calm, look justified, look like they won. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can rise to the bait and explode in front of everyone, or you can step off the stage quietly. In Stoic philosophy, Marcus Aurelius warned, if you respond in rage, they win. Because the moment you react, you're no longer in control. They've pulled the strings. You're dancing to their tune. Imagine this. A young woman at a coffee shop overhears a stranger whispering about her, mocking her style. The group nearby laughs, and all it takes is one snide comment for the room to freeze. Her gut tightens. She could call them out. She could yell. She could shame them. Instead, she stands, smiles, pays for her drink, and walks out, leaving them staring at her back in silence. No drama, no confrontation, no performance, but the look on their faces when she left, that was the real reaction. That's the power of choosing silence. You see, silence isn't just a retreat, it's a choice, a statement. It says, I refuse to validate your behavior. I refuse to join your narrative. My worth isn't determined by your opinion. And in that silence, your presence speaks louder than any words ever could. Because people remember reactions, but they respect dignity. They remember the one who exploded, but they respect the one who walked away. Cool, collected, sovereign. Think about the last time someone tried to drag you into something, called you out publicly, or tried to embarrass you. Did you respond? Did you explain? Did you lace up your gloves for a fight that wasn't yours? Or did you do something more powerful, something quieter, and step away? That silent step says more than any rebuttal ever could. You didn't just walk away from them. You walked into yourself. And in those seconds, the silence echoes, announcing what you refuse to do, declaring the line they can't cross again. So next time someone tries to bait you in public, to test your limits. Just don't give it to them. Not because you don't care, but because you've outgrown it. You've evolved past needing to prove. You've progressed beyond explaining, and in that space, they telegraph their weakness, while you telegraph strength. So breathe. Stay silent until the moment passes. And if you stay with me through this video, I'll show you not only why the second moment is even more powerful, but how silence, used right, becomes your strongest form of defense. Ready for scenario number 2? Let's go deeper. Scenario 2. When someone lies about you. There's a certain silence that follows betrayal, not the kind that explodes, but the kind that drains, the kind that settles into your bones when someone lies about you, and worse, when people believe it. There's something uniquely cruel about being misunderstood, about having your name reshaped into a version of you that doesn't exist, and all you can do is watch. Watch them twist the truth. Watch the whispers spread. Watch people you trusted take a step back. And that's the part no one prepares you for. Not the betrayal itself, but the helplessness that comes with it. Because when someone lies about you, you face a choice. React and look defensive, or stay silent and look guilty. A trap either way. And in those moments, when your name is under attack, Stoic wisdom whispers something different. It says, time reveals character, yours and theirs. Because the truth doesn't panic, it doesn't rush, it doesn't sprint to correct every lie. It waits, like seeds quietly growing underground while storms rage above. You don't need to shout into the chaos to defend your name. You need to live in a way that outlasts the noise. That's the hard part. Not screaming, not clapping back, but trusting that reality is patient. Take this story. There was a teacher, respected, quiet, passionate, years of students praising her. But one student, after a failed grade, spread a rumor, said she was unfair, accused her of favoritism. It spread. Staff whispered, administration questioned. She was told to just clear the air. She didn't. She said nothing. And over the next year she kept showing up, calm, clear, focused. The students saw her integrity, her consistency. The whisper died quietly, starved of oxygen. You see, people may fall for a lie once, but over time the lie gets tired. Truth doesn't. So when someone lies about you, and you feel that rush to fix, to react, to shout, remember, you don't need to answer every accusation. In fact, sometimes silence is the clearest answer, because you're not here to fight their fiction. You're here to live your truth. Let them lie, let them whisper, let them watch, and let your life expose the difference. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be indifferent to what makes no difference." Lies feel like they matter. But what matters more is that you stay grounded. Not because it's easier, but because self-control is strength. Anyone can lash out. It takes nothing to respond in anger. But to be betrayed and still choose discipline, that's real power. In the end, they'll forget the gossip, but they'll remember how you carried yourself when it would have been easy to collapse. You are not the story they tell. You are who you are. In silence, in stillness, in how you choose to live when no one claps for it. And if you stay with me, the next moment we'll cover. It's even harder, because it's when someone tries to take credit for your work, And trust me, your silence then, that's when it echoes the loudest. Scenario 3, when you're being tested by manipulation. There's a different kind of war that isn't fought with fists. It's subtle, quiet. It plays out in conversations that leave you doubting yourself, in choices that never felt like yours to begin with. It's the war of manipulation. No yelling, no punches, just confusion. One sentence at a time. You're overreacting. I never said that. You're too sensitive. If you've ever found yourself rewinding a conversation in your mind, replaying the same words over and over, trying to make sense of how you went from calm to doubting your reality, you already know what this is. You were being tested, not by life, but by someone who wanted control. Manipulators don't always wear masks. Sometimes they smile, they flatter, and they test you. Just a little at first. They change a detail, deny a promise, make you feel like you're losing your grip. And if you react, they win, because the reaction is the goal. They feed off of your energy, your confusion, your need to explain, to fix, to understand. But the Stoics, they give us a different play. Don't waste words where your energy is being drained. See, when someone manipulates you, the most powerful move isn't to out-talk them, it's to stop playing. Picture a chessboard. The manipulator makes a move, you pause, your mind is racing. Should I respond? Should I prove I'm right? Should I explain what I meant? But what if you put the piece down and walk away? They can't win a game you're not playing. I'll tell you a story. There was a young man, early in his career, ambitious, driven, his boss, charming, at first. Then came the small things, projects reassigned without notice, misunderstood emails, meetings where he was left out, but blamed. When he brought it up, his boss smiled and said, "You're reading too much into things. You have to relax." Gaslight, distract, control. He stayed silent, but not out of fear. He watched, he documented, he adjusted. He stopped trying to be understood and started making moves outside the board. New connections, private achievements, quiet wins. 6 months later, he left. New role, better pay, more respect, and his former boss, still playing chess, alone. Manipulation thrives in dialogue. So when you fall silent, not from weakness, but from clarity, the manipulator loses power, because what they fear most is not confrontation, it's disinterest. They want your energy, your outrage, your confusion. Starve them of it. Let them make their moves. You don't respond, you evolve. That's what the Stoics knew, that some battles aren't worth your peace, that letting someone bait you, draw you into their chaos, make you question your values, that's the real loss. And when you're being tested by manipulation, your silence isn't just resistance, it's mastery. Because the one who can stay grounded while others try to twist the world around them is the one who holds the real power. So next time they try to provoke, confuse, bait you into explaining yourself over and over again, remember this: you don't need to win their game, you just need to stop playing it. And in the next scenario, we face a different kind of silence, the kind you keep. That one hits even harder. Scenario 4, when they're just looking for a reaction. Sometimes people don't want a conversation. They don't want clarity. They're not after truth. They just want a reaction. Think about that for a moment. You're not being engaged. You're being baited. A little eye roll in a meeting, a vague jab online, a sarcastic tone that's just sharp enough to cut, but dull enough to deny. And your instinct? To clap back, to prove you're not the one. But pause, just for a second. Ask yourself, what do they actually gain if I explode? Power, attention. They get to paint you as the problem. And you? You lose the one thing that Stoicism teaches us to guard above all else: your peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." That's the power of silence. It's not passivity, it's protection. Because when someone is just looking for a reaction, your anger becomes their fuel. But your silence, that's disarming. Let me tell you a real story. A woman worked in corporate sales, sharp, confident, a top performer. She led with results, not noise. But there was someone on her team who didn't like that. Passive-aggressive comments in meetings. "Oh, must be nice to get the easy clients." Or, "Some of us actually have to work for our bonuses." It was constant. And one day, it got personal. In front of her team, this co-worker made a comment about her looks. Sarcastic, loaded. The room tensed. All eyes were on her. And she could have responded. She could have ripped him apart. But she didn't. She smiled, closed her notebook, and said calmly, "I don't entertain sideshows." Then she left the room. That phrase, it spread through the office like wildfire. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't engage. But she owned the room. That's the thing. You can't always control what they say. But you can absolutely control how you respond. And if you're still watching this video right now, it means something inside you recognizes that. You've been tested. You've seen how people poke, prod, bait, hoping to drag you down to their level. Maybe it's online. Maybe it's at work. Or maybe it's someone close. A parent, a sibling, a partner. Someone who knows your weak spots and presses them. Not out of love, but for control. Here's the truth. Not every action deserves your energy. Not every insult requires a defense. Sometimes the loudest message is the one you never say out loud. Reacting gives them control. Silence keeps it. The Stoics knew this. They believed that people reveal themselves in their efforts to provoke, that when you say nothing, you give them space to destroy themselves with their own words. And if you've made it this far, you're not like them. You're not here to win arguments in comments or prove strangers wrong. You're here to grow, to protect what matters most, your focus, your energy, your mental clarity. And if that resonates with you, if you're the kind of person who values peace over drama, purpose over pride, then do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. This channel isn't for the loudest. It's for the ones building in silence, the ones who choose strategy over spectacle, the ones who've been through fire and now know better than to strike at every spark. We're building something here, a place for people who are done reacting, who are focused on the long game. If that's you, stick around. The rest of this video, it only gets more real from here. You've stayed calm, you've stayed silent, but this time, your silence isn't about control, it's about dignity. Scenario 5. When you're dealing with narcissists or ego-driven people. You walk in with honesty, and they meet you with masks. You offer connection, and they offer a performance. This is what it's like to deal with the ego-driven. And if you've ever found yourself questioning your own sanity after a conversation, replaying moments, asking, was I overreacting? Did I say something wrong? Why do I always feel worse after talking to them? There's a reason. Narcissists and ego-driven people don't argue to understand. They argue to win. And the battlefield, it's not logic. It's your emotions. Here's what the Stoics knew. Never argue with someone committed to misunderstanding you. Because once you recognize that someone doesn't want to understand you, you stop explaining yourself to walls. You stop defending your truth to people whose ears are only tuned to their own voice. and you stop draining your energy trying to fix what was never your burden in the first place. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman, Eleanor. She was intelligent, creative, emotionally aware, and she worked under a boss who, well, was the opposite. A man driven not by truth but by image. If the credit was good, he took it. If something failed, he blamed. But more than that, he was subtle. Just enough praise to keep her hoping, just enough gaslighting to keep her second-guessing. One day in a meeting, he publicly tore down an idea she had presented just a week earlier, the very one he'd praised in private. She was stunned. She almost spoke, almost defended herself, but something in her stopped. She looked around the room, saw the smirks, the games, and quietly, she closed her notebook and didn't say a word. Weeks later, she left. No dramatic email, no final confrontation, just silence. And in that silence, she built something of her own. A business, a team, a life. She never went back to explain anything, because the truth doesn't need defending when it's lived out loud, and that's what ego hates most. Not the argument, not the confrontation, but your indifference, your refusal to fight on their terms, your silence. That's what shatters the mirror. When you're dealing with people who only listen to the sound of their own voice, silence becomes your strength. Because silence says, I don't exist to validate your fantasy. I don't owe you my explanation. And I don't have to stay in this game just because you keep playing. See, some people want you to react, because your reaction gives them proof that they still have control, proof that they can bend your mind. But silence says, you no longer live rent-free in my head. And that's terrifying to a narcissist. Because when you walk away without burning down the house, you leave them sitting in the ruins they built, alone, with a mirror that no longer lies. So if you're dealing with someone who constantly twists your words, spins narratives, drags you into pointless fights, remember this. You are not here to win their approval. You are here to guard your peace. And sometimes, the most powerful boundary is to say nothing at all. Stillness in the face of chaos isn't just self-control, it's self-respect. Scenario number 6, when you've already outgrown the fight. There's a strange kind of silence that comes after the storm, when your heart no longer jumps at the sound of a name, when your stomach doesn't twist at the thought of their voice, when you see the drama unfolding and you feel nothing. Not because you don't care, but because you've outgrown the war. There was a time you would have jumped in, defended yourself, fought tooth and nail to be heard. But now, you look at the same battlefield, and all you see is wasted time. Not because you're weak, but because peace has become more valuable than proving a point. The Stoics had a phrase for this. You win when you no longer need to win. Think about that. Not winning the argument, not getting the last word, but realizing you've already won. Because you've detached, you've grown taller than the chaos. You've elevated. Not above people, but above the need for their validation. Let me tell you a story. There's a man I once read about. Name was Darnell. Grew up in a rough neighborhood, surrounded by conflict. He spent his teens fighting to survive, literally and emotionally. Family life, chaotic. School, a war zone. Every slight, every insult, every challenge had to be answered. His fists were his vocabulary. Anger was his translator. But something happened when he hit his mid-20s. He started boxing, professionally, and at first it was just an outlet. But then it became discipline, structure, stillness. He learned that real power isn't swinging at every threat, it's conserving your energy for what actually matters. One day, years later, Darnell was walking through his old neighborhood. Someone shouted at him, a familiar face, an old rival. This guy tried to provoke him hard, called him names, got in his face, even shoved him. The crowd started gathering. Phones were out. People were waiting for a show. But Darnell, he just smiled, looked the guy dead in the eyes, and said, "I'm not who I used to be," then turned and walked away. That was a win. Not because he beat someone, but because he beat the old version of himself. There's a certain strength in restraint. It's not the loud, dramatic strength people clap for. It's quiet, deep, the kind of strength that can sit with an insult and not flinch, the kind that knows the difference between a reaction and a response. And this is where you know you've grown, when the same situation that once shook you now barely moves you. The text that once ruined your day, now unread. The passive-aggressive comment that used to ignite a fire in your chest, now just noise. The people still trying to play the same games, still throwing the same bait. You've seen it all before, and you've lost interest. That's growth. That's real. You see, there's a temptation to prove we've changed by showing up louder. But often the real proof is in not showing up at all. Because the more peace you find within, the less you seek to win from without. Sometimes the best move is to walk away, not out of fear, but because you finally can. You don't have to prove yourself in rooms you've outgrown. You don't have to shrink just to fit back into places that never saw your value. You don't have to fight to be heard, when you've already become someone who listens to their own voice. This is what the Stoics understood. That self-mastery isn't a battle. It's a release. A release from the need to always be right, from the chase for recognition, from the thirst for revenge. You win, not when they finally admit you were right, but when you no longer need them to. Scenario number 7. When you know life will handle it. There comes a moment when you stop watching the clock. You stop refreshing the screen. You stop wondering when they'll get what's coming to them, not because you've forgotten, but because you've remembered something deeper. The universe doesn't need your help to deliver justice. You don't need to scream or rant or orchestrate some perfect act of vengeance. That's not strength. That's desperation dressed up as power. But true strength is trusting the timing, trusting that life, with all its brutal and beautiful balance, keeps score, even when it looks like it doesn't. There's an old Stoic idea that still holds today. You don't need to seek revenge. Just sit back and wait. Those who hurt you will eventually destroy themselves. Now that's not bitterness. That's not passive aggression. It's simply truth. Because life has a strange way of circling back. People who manipulate, deceive, use others for gain, eventually run out of people to fool. The bridges they burn start to matter. The lies they told start to unravel. And when no one's left to blame, no one's left to charm. They're forced to face the one person they can't run from, themselves. And that
is karma, not some cosmic lightning bolt, not instant payback, but slow, patient, precise, like nature, like time. Let me tell you a true story. It's about a man named Elijah, a quiet, reserved guy, software engineer, focused, dedicated. Until one day, a colleague took credit for one of his biggest projects. Not only that, he manipulated the narrative, made Elijah look incompetent, and management believed it. Elijah could have gone nuclear. He had proof, could have outed the guy publicly, but he didn't. He waited, in silence. People thought he was weak, passive, but Elijah knew something they didn't. People who rise through dishonesty don't stay up for long. Months passed. The project? It failed, because the man who stole it didn't understand it. He got exposed, not by Elijah, but by reality. And when the dust settled, the truth came to the surface. Elijah didn't just get vindicated, he got promoted, not because he fought back, but because he didn't need to. And here's the thing most people miss. Karma doesn't always strike loud. Sometimes it's a whisper, a missed opportunity, a connection lost, a door that doesn't open, and most times you won't even see it, but you'll feel it, the weight leaving your chest, the peace of knowing you didn't lower yourself to their level. Silence is a vote of confidence, a declaration. I trust life more than I trust my anger. The ego wants to retaliate, but wisdom says, let them talk, let them twist, let them think they've won. Because you're not playing the short game anymore, you're playing the long one. And in the long game, silence is a weapon, because it gives karma space to operate. And listen, if you've ever been wronged, if someone tried to bury you with lies, if they betrayed you, underestimated you, or walked away without apology, then this is your reminder. You don't need to chase closure. You don't need to craft revenge. Just keep building, keep growing. Let the silence speak, and life will echo everything they tried to silence in you. Because when it's all said and done, the loudest revenge is living well, without them, above them, beyond them. This is the power of restraint. This is the calm in the storm. This is silence. Louder than revenge. You see, the world applauds the loud, the confrontational, the explosive. But the Stoics, they knew a secret, that stillness is undefeated. We've been taught that power means shouting louder, dominating arguments, winning battles, but every time you stay silent in chaos, every time you walk away from drama, every time you choose peace instead of proving your point, you are choosing freedom. You're choosing not to carry what doesn't belong to you. And that is power. The loudest voice doesn't always win, but the most centered one always walks away free. So now I ask you, which one of these hit you the hardest? Was it the friend who turned against you, the manipulation that nearly broke you, the moment you realized you've outgrown the need to be understood? Drop it in the comments. Not for me, for you. Let your silence have a voice. Let others know they're not alone in choosing calm over chaos. Because we are rewriting the rules here. The strong no longer shout. The wise no longer chase. We sit, we wait, and life handles the rest. And if even one part of this felt like it was speaking directly to something you're going through, then don't keep this to yourself. Send this video to someone who needs to hear it. Not someone who loves noise, but someone who's learning that silence is strength, that stillness is a weapon, and that walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Subscribe if you haven't. We're building something here, not a community of noise, but of clarity, of still minds, of voices that know when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. Because silence isn't empty, it's full of answers.